as we head into the actual top 50, we'll begin with the bottom 10 on this list. So at number 50, we have Thorin Oakenshield. This is from the Thorin's company list, since there are a lot of Thorins in this line.
Yes.
At 49, we have Great Eagles. At 48, we have Legless Greenleaf. This is the Legless from the Fellowship list, and I imagine also from the Breaking of the Fellowship list would also
That's where I
count.
evaluated him from, yeah.
We have Dwalin the Dwarf. Again, this is the Thorin's company version of Dwalin the Dwarf at number 47. At number 46, we have Ents. At 45, we have Halbarad. At 44, we have Hurin the Tall. At 43, we have Glowin the Dwarf, yet again from the Thorin's company list. At 42, we have Thror, the King Under the Mountain. And at 41, we have Tariel from the Mirkwood list.
Shout out to Damien.
Yes, shout out to Damien. She made the list.
Not that he's listening to this.
Perhaps not as high as he would have wanted her to make the list.
Oh, no.
Certainly not as high.
It's not as high.
So I imagine we may talk about that a bit. But to start off with, are there any profiles you guys wanted to discuss? Anything that shocked you? Anything that seemed surprising or odd?
Well, I'll throw in a word for Tariel. I had her at 27th. You know, she's suffering from some of the stuff that I'm sure we're going to talk about this a lot over the course of the night. She is only on foot. She's got 3 attacks. She's got fight 3. She's got a bow if you need it with a 3+ shoot value. She gets multiple attacks if your opponent, as we talked about. We talked about her at length in our last pod because she made a couple of categories. She's really cheap. She fights really well on foot. You know, even though she can't take a horse, if your opponent is dumb enough to throw lots of models at her and power her up, you know, she can take advantage of that. So I have her at 27, so don't send the trolls after me. The model I want to talk about is Thorin, and I let young Thorin Oakenshield go, even though young Thorin Oakenshield is a fantastic model. But I had company Thorin, who I don't even particularly like. Like, I'm a huge fan of Erebor Reclaimed and basically everybody for the dwarf. But I mean, company Thorin is 3/3/3 with 3 wounds, 3 fate, defense 8. You can give him Orcrist, which is an elven-made weapon at fight 6, and he can strike. And you can give him the Oakenshield, where he can do a wound while shielding. He's the big surprise for me. I had him 25th. He just barely cracked the top 50. And, you know, given that company Dwalin is higher on the list and company Gloin is higher on the list, neither of whom I think are anywhere as good as company Thorin, I am a little surprised by that.
So I am grabbing my numbers right now to make sure I am doing this properly. Just make sure that I can defend this. So I evaluated all of them, and here's what you're missing from Thorin. Thorin, by the way, is great. I always take him. He's a really good model. His ability to win fights is about the same as what you're going to see from the other guys because none of them are mounted. Well, you can mount them, but you don't get the cavalry bonuses because they're on ponies, right? So they're all fight 6, 3 attack models with strike. So their ability to win fights is all the same. Thorin does not have an axe. Okay. And in my evaluations, I evaluated, probably wrongly, against all odd defense models, which means that his ability to wound is going to be a little bit less when you piercing strike and reroll 1s with Glowin than Glowin. And everybody is going to do worse than Dwalin because Dwalin is strength 5 with a 2-handed weapon that does not have a penalty. So when you stack them all up against each other just from an offensive perspective, ignoring everything else, Thorin is probably going to do about as much damage as you would expect to see from Glowin, maybe a little less if you're willing to Piercing Strike. And he's going to do a lot less than Dwalin will. On the resiliency front, he is the best. He is clearly the best. No questions asked. And when you look at the scores and stuff that I gave him, let's see. So Thorin was number 57 on my list. Again, didn't make it. He has toughness score of 8, which is really, really good. Dwalin has a 6 because he's got less fate, lower defense, right? He's even got lower wounds. And Glowin has a 4 because I piercing struck. So when you lose, your defense goes down even below what Dwalin's is, and you take even more damage. Plus, you've only got the 1 fate and the 2 wounds, so it's just horrible. But the primary weighting in my scale was for offense. And the offense from Dwalin was the best. The offense from Glowin was the next, and then Thorin's was the third. And when you stack that up, he just didn't make the list. I wanted him to make the list. I really like this profile. I think it's far better than I'm giving him credit for. I probably should have given him benefit for just two-handing with Orcrist.
Well, that's what I was going to
That
ask.
probably would have gotten him a higher ranking, and he probably would have made the list if I'd done that.
Yeah, well, that's what I was going to ask because Dwalin is sort of a special case, and I'm not going to knock anybody for saying that Dwalin with the two-handed weapon and Burly at strength 5 is better than Thorin when it comes to killing things like that. That makes sense, I guess. But
let me do this.
Gloin has no two-handed weapon option, right?
Yeah.
He's got the throwing axes, but not the two-handed weapon, right? This
correct.
Yep. Yeah. So I guess that's sort of my question is, because if you two-hand with Orcrist, you're not only getting the benefit of the elven-made weapon, which makes him better at winning fights. It just does.
But you can single-hand with Orcrist, which is what I originally did. I'm currently computing the stats of what happens if you're willing to pay a might point to boost. So yeah, I'm grabbing those numbers now. I'm not going to change my rankings or anything.
Okay.
But
my point is just I don't think that Company Gloin is a better killer than Company Thorin. I just don't.
Yeah. So both of them get. So when you two hands with Orcrist, because of the bands that I used, both Thorin and Dwalin get a 2 for hero slaying and a 3 for troop slaying, which means you're expected to do about a wound to Shagrat, and you're expected to do a wound and a half against Uruk-hai scouts, which would put Thorin in the final rankings. He would have cleared the top 50.
Okay.
I'm finding the exact placement now, but
yeah.
But
so I'm just okay.
As a slight yay
so you're
for
right.
Glowin. Glowin, by the way, did rank lower than Thorin in my final estimation. But at least as a slight hat tip to Glowin, he does get the reroll of 1s to wound, which, as far as I know, I don't think Thorin gets from anywhere.
He does in Thorin's company.
Bonus?
He does
yeah.
in
Oh,
Thorin's
there we
they
go.
all have that.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Well, then there we go.
That's just I don't again with defense 8 with the extra bonus stats plus the two-handed elven-made weapon. I would take Thorin. Dwalin is great, and if you want to take Dwalin over Thorin, that's great. But I do think the two of them in some order are the best slayers in the company. This is not even my favorite Thorin, but like for resiliency, he's up there with, basically any of the dwarf lords that are not Durin, maybe even Durin. Depends on what you're fighting. So, anyways, that was my contribution. But we're at the top 50. I mean, it's gonna be a lot of parsing.
So one last note: he would have come in at my number 44 if he'd have gotten it. So jumped a good 14 places, pushed a high elf captain off the list, which is higher than Glowin, who would have been number 50, but still below Dwalin, who's at number 34.
Right. So I am satisfied then.
There you go.
All right.
Talking talking about satisfied, I'd like to spend a short, very, very short time talking about Thror. Because
Oh,
Thror
yes.
did not perform particularly well for either of you guys. Um, in fact, I think he just barely squeaked onto your list, Rythbryt, and I don't think he made your list at
Yes.
all, Tiberius.
Nope.
Yes.
But yeah,
I have him at 49. He did make my list. I don't feel particularly good about that, but just to give a context, um, I have him just behind Company Gloin, not Company Gloin, Champion of Erebor Gloin and Gimli. So he's sort of the third of these, you know, fight six, 3 attack dwarves on foot. But for me, it's the lack. He's very good defense. He's got the Arkenstone. In theory, that should make him more survivable. In practice, it has not made my Thror more survivable. But he can't. He has absolutely no way boost his 2 wound rolls other than spending might, which he needs for other stuff. And that's what held him back because Gloin is burly with a 2-handed weapon. Gimli can get a +1, sometimes even a +2 to wound if he wants. So for me, he was behind the 3 of them. He's still really good, but that's where he came in my ranking.
He's also speed 5. He doesn't knock stuff over. And he's, yeah, I mean, same thing as Galadriel, right? I mean, he's more than 100 points that you're paying for something that might kill a guy a turn, and that's fine. But he's not, you know, he's not he's not Dwalin, right? I mean, if you do a kill count between Thror and Dwalin will probably win every single time unless there's something big that rampages through one of them and bounces off of Thror, right? So, you know, when evaluating Slayers, it didn't break my mind that Thror didn't make my list because he doesn't have anything to help him. You know, as was mentioned, he just doesn't have anything to help him. Maybe if you evaluated him near young Thorin on the one turn where Thorin makes Thror strength 5, maybe, but otherwise, no.
gotcha.
I do, and no, don't mean to step on this. So he does have some tricks to win fights. He is a banner for himself if you got the army bonus. Like, that's nice. You know, he's basically got 4 dice to win the fight, 7 if you're shielding. Of course, you're not doing damage if you're shielding with his particular shield. There are no cavalry models in this army. And so if you want to double his dice up, which you probably want to do, you've got to get traps. It's sort of very hard to get traps with dwarves that have spears because they tend to not want to do the wrap and surround thing that dwarves do if they don't have spears. So that's, you know, again, it held him back a little bit for me.
So I'm not going to disagree with any of that. I don't feel particularly attached to Thror, although he did finish in the 20s for me, just so you're aware. So I feel like I should probably explain that for about 30 seconds, because that may seem a little high to people. So for starters, obviously, I did take into consideration the 6-inch banner radius. You guys know me. I love banners.
Yep.
I love resilience. I love shielding. I love shields. So obviously, Thror is like, he's right at the middle. The only guy who might beat him for this would be Halbarad if Halbarad had a shield, but he doesn't. So toward that end, we have Thror. But I kind of take issue with the thinking of, well, it's difficult trapping people, it's difficult knocking people down, you don't have cavalry to assist you, because I think in many ways, Army of Thror is the asymmetric, non-cavalry cavalry army. Allow me to explain. Obviously, they don't have the speed. 5-inch speed, very accurate. However, with the access that you have to Grim Hammers, you have the ability to knock people over. And I think the way that you use Thror to knock people over is you don't run him as the center point guy. That's what Thorin should do. That's what Thrain should do. You don't do that with Thror. With Thror, you run him on the sides. You put him in a fight with a Grimhammer. And when you win, because you will, because you're Thror, because winning the fight is not really the issue, the Grimhammer knocks the person over. And then Thror kills them quite efficiently. And it's a very, very good combo. It becomes an even better combo with the fact that you can make your Grimhammer strength 4 with Thror, which means you have a much better chance of knocking people over. You still have spear support action, which means if you really need to, you can make sure that you win the fight. At this point, you've got 5 dice trying to win the fight, plus a banner reroll in there. So you're doing okay. In addition to that,
if you want to knock a dude over, and that's a good point, like you two hand with the Grimhammer.
Yeah.
then you get a plus. I mean, if you're fighting a strength 3 guy, it's a plus. And now most heroes are not going to be strength 3, but it's a plus
Right.
2 basically at that point, or a plus 1 against strength 4. So that's true. That's good.
I mean, at least the way I see it,
You can get
even
it that way.
if, and I don't know if you could, but even if you could, you have a decent chance of even knocking over something like a cave troll. It's not a great chance, but you're at least within the range where it's a
Yeah.
possibility. Like, there's a lot of things you can do to people. Obviously, I don't think you're ever going to knock over like a Sauron or a Balrog or something like that. But you're at least within striking range that even if you're up against an Azog model or something like that, you could knock that guy clean over and then just start wailing on him with all of your extra dice. So like there's a lot of opportunity there. And then on top of that, you've got your other good quality support heroes who can just hold the line for you. I mean, it's going to take a long time to kill the likes of Thrain. It's going to take arguably even longer to kill Thorin just because he can shield and still do damage to people. So like, there's a lot there. And all the while you're just feeding everything to Thror. So like, I get why people wouldn't take him, because I'm sure that people were just looking at the single hero profile. So I get that. But I don't know. I feel like if we're looking at people in their very best light, I'd say Thror has a chance of knocking people over. You just have to use him right. That's all.
Yeah.
So
That's certainly true. That's certainly true with the bash, and it's a good example of how you can accomplish things you need to accomplish with different kinds of armies, and that army has tools to get models on the ground if you want. So that's certainly true, and of course his damage potential is going to go up. I guess the thing for me, and just in terms of ranking them, is that that's true of every model. So, it's true that the army of Thror has an easier time than models that don't have hammers of knocking models down. And strength 4 hammers are really great, but he wasn't. I wasn't going to put him above other 3 attack models that get +1s to wound.
that's fair. That's fair.
But that's is what it is.